Good afternoon. It is Lent. I know that's the way most people who observe Lent kind of feel by this point. We're all busy with giving things up and trying to keep resolutions at least a few days longer than we did for New Year's. And some of us aren't eating meat every day. Some of us aren't eating meat at all or dairy at all. All of us are looking forward to two things. One is Easter and one is spring. And I know some of us are having a blizzard this week, which is not terribly spring-like. But today is a special Sunday in Lent. It is Laetare Sunday. And for those of you who might not know, which I assume is almost everybody, because why wouldn't it be? Laetare Sunday is a Sunday that comes from that word laetare, or being joyful in the Latin. And for those of us who are Romans or Anglicans, we get to wear a rose-colored chasuble and stole. Mine happened to be at the sacristy, and as you can tell, I'm in my home office. But just for the heck of it, I have on what most of us think are pink underneath, but the church always said it was rose. Go figure. So, as I said, the name comes from the Latin laetare, or be joyful, and in the old Roman Missal, the entrance chant, or the introit, was taken from the 66th chapter of Isaiah, the 10th verse, which begins, "Rejoice with Jerusalem, be glad for her, all you who love her." Long tradition, going back centuries, when Lent actually started the Monday of the third week before Easter, in other words, tomorrow. And so today was actually Mardi Gras. And another long tradition in Rome, when the popes and emperors and people jousted for power and position, there grew up a tradition of the Pope blessing a single rose and then a very complex rose with thorns and many, many pounds of gold to give by his legates to favorite secular princes and leaders. If that sounds familiar in terms of the way we do business today, it maybe should. But there's other traditions around this Sunday. That is playing of music and joyful hymns. And in England, it's Mothering Sunday, a day in which people are asked to go back to the church of their baptism, their mother church, and also in which mothers are honored in the same kinds of ways we do on Mother's Day, but without the, how shall I put it, intervention of Hallmark into the holiday. But enough of that history. What I want to talk to you about today is not so much the lessons of today, and that's unusual for me, but I want to talk about this idea of joy and the ways in which we confuse it often with another idea, wrongly, happiness. And the words in both Hebrew and Greek are different, and the concepts are different. Happiness. I think happiness is a state in which one can find oneself emotion-filled. And that's not necessarily bad. It is something you and I feel and which we actually desire greatly, because it has to do with how we're put together and what makes us able to cope. It can describe an enormous range of things, a scale that can move from something some of you might recall from a musical of the late 60s known as You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown. Happiness is two kinds of ice cream. Finding your skate key, telling the time. Now, my son has no idea what a skate key is or was, but aside from that, it can range from that to the happiness we feel when something good, even something magnificent happens. When we feel loved or fulfilled. On our marriage night, on the day of our religious vows. And feel is a key here. And feeling is not bad. Feeling can be healing and expressive and extremely important. But it can range from that to the happiness, say, of the Beatitudes, or happy or blessed, Makarios. Happy are you when you're persecuted for the sake of righteousness, and other counterintuitive ideas. And now happiness can be real or an illusion, like a puff of smoke breathed in and then no longer there. In all these rungs of the happiness scale, the common element to me seems to be that happiness is a desired change in the way we see ourselves, I see myself, and experience self. It is a state, temporary or permanent, and it seems to me most often to be achieved. And most importantly, and here I defer to my psychologist colleagues, of whom I have many, it seems that it is something that can happen to me, or to you, to my next door neighbor, my office mate, my enemy. Happiness happens. Even if it's in a collective context, happiness happens to individuals. So is that what this Sunday is about? Is this the Don't Worry, Be Happy Sunday? Not at all. Nor is it the let's eat meat, let's drink wine, let's have fun Sunday. It's not about happiness. It's about joy. And joy, I would suggest, deeply rooted in Scripture, both Hebrew and Christian, is an action in which we are commanded to perform, to take part in, to play and to dance on the stage of salvation in all of its acts and with all of its characters and plots. Joy, from the word simcha, sameach, is the expression of the wellness of our souls and bodies, and a gift we give to each other in community, and to all creation as community, and creation to us as community. We are commanded to be joyful. It is a religious obligation. It is something that is binding and tying a community together and extending the life of that community to wider and wider circles. The edges are brought in. Everyone is impacted. It's even in the law. We can read in Deuteronomy on the instructions for celebrating the Festival of Weeks, the Harvest Festival, the gifts from the harvest. First fruits are to be brought to the temple and given to the poor, and everyone is in the circle of rejoicing. It says, "Rejoice before the Lord your God, you and your sons and daughters, your male and female slaves, the Levites," read priests, "resident in your towns, as well as the strangers, the orphans, the widows who are among you, at the place that the Lord your God will choose as a dwelling for his name, remembering that you were slaves in Egypt, and hence redeemed." Actually, in the book of Deuteronomy, a book I would guess most of us avoid like the plagues of Exodus, the book we associate with all the things we are not supposed to do, we are commanded to rejoice 12 different times in different contexts. Men are even exempted from military service in the first year of their marriage so that they can be at home and bring joy, rejoicing to their wives. Joy is used 10 times more than happiness, Ashrei, in the Hebrew Scriptures. And it is always both transformational of the one who rejoices and the one to whom joy is brought. And it is always collective. It is what we do. I can be happy But the compelling notion is that we need to be there to rejoice. And it is actually what God does in turn as God asks us. Dancing and rejoicing over us as on a day of festival, we model God so thoroughly that God does as we do. It is almost like the fact of God observing the Sabbath. In 3rd Isaiah, we also read, "You will no longer be called forsaken, and your land desolate. You shall be called my delight in her, and your land married, for the Lord delights in you, and the bridegroom rejoices over the bride. So in that way shall God rejoice over you." And it's not exclusive. It's about a God over all creation. We extol, or are to extol, the one who rides on the clouds, rejoicing. It's not exclusive to the human family. Shout joyfully to the Lord, all the earth break forth into song. And elsewhere, let the seas and all that fills them resound. And one of my personal favorites, then shall all the trees of the forest rejoice before the Lord, for he comes to judge the earth. And what is remarkable to me is that joy coexists with, and perhaps often grows out of, sorrow and sadness, as surely as life in nature grows out of death, as peace may grow from the ruins of war, and as glory comes unexpectedly from a cross. In the Psalms, we see Psalm 122, often sung this Sunday, in which the singer rejoices when they say, "Let us go up to the house of the Lord." It is rung round by psalms which express beautifully trust in God in times of tremendous trouble. They cry out to a God who, we keep saying, does not slumber or sleep, even in the midst of chaos and despair. And I think sometimes we keep saying it to make ourselves believe in what is hard to believe. And that leads us, transformed by that faith and hope, into rejoicing. The early church got this. The early persecuted church got this. Paul got this. Paul, whose life veered from blindness to being dissed by the Church of Jerusalem, to many experiences of exile, prison, despair, a lack of the word in his mind being heard, and yet always pushing forward until his final death. Paul got this when he said to the Philippians, "Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say rejoice." So why should we care? Does this mean we should go about, as the Brits say, hap clappy? No. Rejoicing is deeper. And we rejoice and we care because we are among the ones who, as part of all creation, are tasked with bringing, transforming life to and within all creation, and at the same time receiving it from all creation. We are the ones who transform each other and who strengthen each other in weakness, heal in sickness, comfort in death, bring the other by the hand, by the branch, by the whisper in the night, or the cascading stream, from division and brokenness into wholeness, and from death into life. We are the ones who join in the dance of the Creator, of the Redeemer, of the one who sustains, and we rejoice over all that is fallen until our very breath, the breath that sustains our song, even as tears well and hearts are pierced, until our very breath becomes the life breath of those whose arms we take and bring into salvation's very embrace. Because we are the ones who must come to understand as generations before us did. That rejoicing is a deep sign of a deeper faith in an end time and in the one who ushers it in, and which either begins in our midst or perhaps does not begin at all. So on this day of the glorious color of rose or pink, take your choice, and the shouts of feasting that break the fast we experience not only in Lent but in this present time, rehearse with me and with each other the joy that John says Jesus promised, becoming the Word that gave life out of death, charging us to abide in transformative, self-giving love, so that his joy might be in us and our joy be complete. Wear rose. Give a toast. Extend a hand. Let it be so. God bless.